Hey, friend. I'm glad you're here tonight. Before we start, thank you for choosing to spend your time with me. This space we share, this quiet corner of the night, matters more than you think. So, if you enjoy what you're about to hear, do me a small favor, give this video a like, and make sure you're subscribed to the channel. It really helps more than you know. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from tonight? Which city? Which country? And what time is it there right now? Is it midnight? Is it 3 a.m.? Are you listening while the rest of your world sleeps? I read every single comment, and I love seeing the map of all of us scattered across the planet, connected in this moment. Now, settle in. Close your eyes if you like. Let the air around you feel a little heavier, a little older. Because tonight, we're not just stepping into history, we're stepping far beyond it. Beyond cities, beyond kings, beyond even the oldest myths you've ever heard. Tonight, we are going to meet the Neanderthals, not as a passing chapter in a textbook, not as the clumsy cave dwellers you might have been shown in a cartoon, but as they truly were. They were not our ancestors. Not exactly. They were something parallel, something close enough to touch, to understand, to fear. And yet, they were unlike anyone you've ever known. Long before the world was divided by borders and flags, it was divided by species. Not the animals in the forests, though they were there, huge and dangerous, but by us and almost us. Neanderthals walked the same earth you stand on now. They breathed the same air, drank the same water, stared at the same moon. But their world was harsher, colder, filled with predators whose shadows could blot out the stars. They faced the great cats, the bears, the wolves, and something even more dangerous, us, Homo sapiens. But before we talk about the end, we have to talk about the beginning. Picture it, a Europe not yet carved by fields and villages, but by ice. Vast sheets of it, taller than any building you've ever seen, stretching from horizon to horizon. Between them, valleys green in summer, but deadly in winter. Herds of mammoth moving like living mountains. The air sharp enough to cut your lungs. And somewhere, in the shelter of a cliff or the mouth of a cave, a small fire flickers. Around it, figures move broad-shouldered, barrel-chested, their faces both familiar and strange. Their brows heavy, their jaws strong, their eyes deep-set and dark. These are the Neanderthals. They are not brutes, not beasts. They are masters of their world. Every tool they hold is shaped with precision. Every hunt is planned. Every scar on their bodies tells a story of survival. They are not afraid of the cold. They wear it like skin. Their children are taught from the moment they can walk how to grip a spear, how to track the faintest print in snow, how to read the clouds for storms. But there is more to them than survival. They bury their dead with care, laying flowers, placing tools beside them for the journey ahead, because they believe there is a journey ahead. They sing, though the sound would be strange to your ears, lower, slower, with rhythms that echo the wind in the mountains. They decorate themselves with ochre and shells. They know beauty, they know grief, they know love. And yet, their world is never still. Even in the safety of a cave, there are sounds: the crack of ice splitting on a far-off cliff, the low growl of a cave bear waking too soon from its sleep, the distant thud of hooves as bison run from something you cannot yet see. In this world, fear is not weakness, it is warning. And the Neanderthals have learned to listen. But there is one sound they do not yet understand. It is quieter than the roar of beasts, softer than the hiss of snow against stone. Footsteps, light, swift, coming from the south. At first they think it's nothing. Another band of their own kind, perhaps. But the scent is wrong. The gait is different. And when they finally see the newcomers, something in their bones tightens. These others are taller, leaner, their faces smoother, their voices sharper. They carry weapons shaped in ways the Neanderthals have never seen. They laugh more loudly, move more boldly, waste nothing and take everything. They do not ask to share the land. They simply step into it, as if it was theirs all along. And the ice, the predators, the hunger, all the enemies the Neanderthals have faced suddenly feel smaller than this. Because these others are not just surviving, they are expanding, and they have no intention of stopping. The Neanderthals do not yet know it, but the greatest threat they will ever face has just arrived. Not a beast, not a storm, but a cousin. A shadow that walks like them, thinks like them, hunts like them, but plays by different rules. And in a world where every breath is a battle, the rules decide who will still be here when the ice melts. Tonight, we walk with the Neanderthals. We will feel what they felt. And we will try to understand how a people who survived the coldest winters in history could still be extinguished by something so close and so human. The morning for a Neanderthal begins long before the sun touches the rim of the horizon. In a darkness that is not empty, but layered with sound, the drip of water inside the cave, the slow breathing of kin still wrapped in furs, the faint rustle of embers stirring under their own ash. Cold is the first thing you feel, not the kind that stings your skin for a moment, but the kind that seeps into bone and marrow, waiting for the moment you stop moving so it can claim you. There is no luxury of waking slowly. You rise because the day will not wait, and the day is not kind. The eldest of the band moves first, the one with a knee twisted from a long-ago hunt, yet still the keeper of memory. He feeds the fire before speech, because without its light and warmth, there will be no speech at all. Sparks leap toward the cave ceiling, dancing in the shadows of figures painted there long before anyone here was born. Herds of red deer, lines of mammoth, symbols whose meanings have shifted, but whose presence is still law. Outside, the air is thick with mist, heavy with the scent of damp earth and pine resin. A young female, her hair matted with frost, steps into the fog to scan the valley. Her eyes move slowly, deliberately, because danger does not always announce itself. Sometimes it is the absence of movement in the place where there should be wind in the grass. She listens. In the far distance, she hears the dull thunder of reindeer hooves. A good sign. Food means survival, but food also means competition. Lions, wolves, and now, the new ones. Always in her mind now. The lean, quick shapes that never stay long in one place. They leave strange marks in the snow, prints more narrow than her people's, alongside lines where something has been dragged, long poles tipped with stone, unlike theirs. When the men return from hunting, they speak of seeing smoke in places where no fire should be, of finding bones split in a way only another thinking hand would split them, of hearing human voices carried on the wind, in patterns of sound just wrong enough to make the hair rise on their necks. But the band does not speak of fear. Fear is not named, it is acted upon. So the morning becomes movement. Men and women alike prepare for the hunt, because here there is no division between those who feed and those who follow. Spears are checked, stone edges tested against the soft skin of the inner arm. The furs worn are patchwork wolf and bear, fox and reindeer, sewn with sinew and mended so many times, the stitching itself is a kind of history. Children too small to walk are bound in hides and slung against the backs of their mothers or older siblings, their eyes wide and unblinking. The band moves as one, leaving the cave's safety, following paths worn deep over generations. The ground underfoot is frozen, the air cutting at the lungs. Every breath is visible, twisting upward in brief spirals before being torn away by the wind. They speak little, not because they have no words, but because words cost warmth. The hunt is not a chase, it is a slow dance of patience and precision. They track not just prints, but the way a branch bends, the freshness of dung, the sudden hush of birds overhead. When they find the herd, they do not rush, they wait. They become the stones, the trees, the snow itself. And then, at the right moment, the air erupts with motion shouts, the thud of feet, the crack of spears hitting flesh. The kill is swift if they are lucky, drawn out if they are not. Blood steams in the cold, a thick copper scent filling every breath. Meat is cut quickly, skin and sinew separated with practiced hands, bones cracked from marrow. Nothing is wasted. They carry what they can. caching the rest under ice and stone, hoping the scavengers will be slow to find it. By the time they return, the sky is dimming again. Winter days are short, and the night is a thing to be respected. Fires are fed until the smoke curls lazily at the cave's roof. The meat is roasted, fat dripping into the flames. Children chew the softer bits first. Elders are served next. The strongest eat last, not from lack of power, but because strength is proven in waiting. Stories are told, not for entertainment, but for remembering how the river flooded one spring, how the great bear was brought down by only 3, how the ice once cracked beneath their feet without warning. And sometimes the stories are warnings about the ones from the south, how they come without asking, how they take without giving, how they leave behind less than they found. No one yet calls them enemies, but the word for stranger is becoming sharper in their mouths. Somewhere outside, beyond the reach of firelight, another camp burns tonight. The smoke drifts on the same wind, carrying scents and sounds that do not belong. The world is not as big as it once was. It begins not with a clash of weapons, but with a shadow on the edge of sight. A boy is the first to see it. He is gathering dry branches just beyond the curve of the valley, the snow crusted beneath his boots, the smell of pine heavy in his nose. Between 2 birches there is movement. Not the low, fluid glide of a wolf, not the clumsy lurch of a bear. This figure stands upright. The boy freezes. He knows the shape of his own kind. He knows the weight of their step, the breadth of their shoulders. This is different, leaner, taller. The face is partly hidden by fur, but the eyes are sharp and narrow, the mouth set in a way that speaks of neither greeting nor warning. Before the boy can move, the figure disappears into the trees, noiseless as smoke. He runs back to the cave, the cold slicing into his lungs. By the time he tells what he saw, the hunters are already on their feet. They know the signs. The new ones are closer now. Too close. That night, the fire is banked low. No one sleeps deeply. Outside, the wind shifts, carrying scents unfamiliar and unsettling, the tang of a different kind of fire, the musk of hides cured in ways they do not know. At dawn, they find tracks in the snow just beyond the last ridge, narrower than their own, spaced further apart, as if made by legs that cover more ground in fewer steps. Beside them are marks in the snow, straight lines that cut the surface like scratches from a giant's claw. The strangers carry something long and hard. Spears, perhaps, but not like theirs. The band moves cautiously, fanning out in silence. They crest the ridge and stop. Across the open plain, near the frozen bend of the river, stand 3 figures. The wind carries their voices high, quick bursts of sound, unlike the slower, deeper tones of Neanderthal speech. One of them points. Another laughs. They are dressed in skins stitched tight to the body. Their furs thinner, but their movements unbothered by the cold. One bends to the river, breaks the ice with a stone, and drinks without hesitation. The Neanderthals watch. They have no word for what they feel. It is not just suspicion, not just curiosity. It is the weight of knowing that these others are not passing through. They are measuring the land. The youngest hunter shifts his grip on his spear, but the elder raises a hand. Not yet. The strangers gather something from the riverbank roots, perhaps, or shellfish, and turn back toward the trees. Before they vanish, one looks over their shoulder. It is a moment without movement, without sound. Just the thin thread of eye meeting eye across a frozen distance. Then they are gone. The band returns in silence. No one speaks until the cave walls close around them. The elder says only this: "They know we are here." From that day, nothing feels the same. Hunts grow more urgent. Fires burn longer into the night. The children are told not to wander beyond the sight of the cave mouth. Meat is stored deeper in the earth, covered with stones. The newcomers are not seen every day, but signs of them appear like whispers, fresh cuts in trees, footprints where no one from the band has walked. Bones split in the way the strangers split them. Even in sleep, their bodies stay tense, as if the air itself is shifted. And then, one morning, smoke rises from a hill that has always been theirs. Not thin, curling smoke from a small fire, but thick, black smoke that speaks of a kill site, of hides being dried, of meat being claimed. They do not know the stranger's words, but they know the meaning of that smoke. A line has been crossed. The ice is vast, the forests endless. Yet somehow the world has become small enough for two kinds of human to collide. And when two predators hunt the same ground, the end is already written. The smoke from the stranger's fire lingers for days, carried by a wind that seems to find its way into every breath, every dream. It is not just a smell now, it is a presence. A reminder that the land no longer belongs entirely to the ones who have walked it since before memory began. The Neanderthal band moves differently in these days. Less like hunters roaming an open range and more like shadows pressed tight against the folds of the land. Paths once taken without thought are now avoided, as if the earth itself has grown unsafe to touch. They hunt deeper into the valleys where the snow stays longer, where the ice on the river is thick enough to mask their footprints. But even there, they find signs: splintered wood that does not match the old trees, ashes beneath a layer of frost, small bones piled in ways that speak of hands, not claws. In the cave, the elders begin to change the way they speak to the young. Lessons once given as stories are now delivered as warnings. The tale of the mammoth that crushed the careless hunter becomes a parable about watching the wind for scents that are not animal. The game of stalking each other in play is sharpened into silent drills of vanishing into the landscape at the flick of a hand. And always, in the spaces between words, is the shape of the threat they do not name aloud. The strangers, for their part, seem to move with the same restless purpose. From the high ridge, the Neanderthals see them in the distance, always in small groups, never alone, their movements weaving between speed and stillness in a way that is unfamiliar yet effective. They carry more than they can possibly eat in a day, dragging their kills on sled-like frames, the hides of reindeer sewn together to keep the snow from swallowing their load. They do not seem afraid of the open ground. They cross it boldly, as if daring the land to challenge them. It is not only their bodies that are different. The tools they carry gleam with a kind of precision the Neanderthals have not seen before, blades so thin they seem fragile, yet they cut clean through hide and sinew. Their spears are lighter, meant for throwing as well as stabbing, giving them reach that a heavier weapon cannot match. And perhaps most unsettling of all, they leave nothing behind that can be used against them. Every piece of bone, every scrap of hide, every shard of stone is taken, repurposed, or burned. It is a kind of thoroughness that feels more like strategy than habit. The Neanderthal hunters begin to change their own ways in response. Spears are remade with narrower tips, hafted differently to allow for quicker strikes. Campsites are shifted more often, the fires built smaller, the smoke controlled by layering damp moss over the flames. Sentinels are posted in the high trees where the land dips, the better to see movement before it comes too close. Even the youngest learn to recognize the sound of snow being crushed by the narrower, faster stride of the newcomers. But adaptation is not the same as peace. In the deep cold of one moonless night, the hunters return to find their cache disturbed. Stones have been shifted, the ice broken, the meat gone. No tracks remain in the open snow, but along the frozen creek, there are faint indentations, long, straight marks, like those left by the strangers' sleds. No one speaks. They do not need to. The loss is more than food. It is a wound to the order of their world. And in the silence that follows, something changes. It is no longer about coexistence. It is about balance, and balance is fragile. In the wild, when two predators take from the same place, they test each other not because they hate, but because the land will not feed both equally. Somewhere, in the dark between the hills, the strangers are likely telling their own version of this story, looking over their shoulders for the heavy steps, the broader shapes, the deeper eyes. Neither side knows how it will end, but both now understand that it will. It happens on a morning so still that even the frost on the branches seems reluctant to fall. The sky is the pale gray of stone worn smooth by a river. the air holding that sharp metallic taste that comes before snow. The Neanderthal hunters set out before the first light, moving in a line broken by rocks and brush, each one no more than a shadow sliding across the frozen earth. They are not following the herds today. They are following a different kind of trail, a faint one, half swallowed by wind, but clear enough for those who know what to look for. The narrow footprints, spaced in long strides, the shallow grooves where something heavy was dragged, the occasional scrap of fiber caught in a thorn bush, woven in a way no animal could weave. The strangers passed this way, and not long ago. The band does not speak as they track. Speech is for when the danger is far. Here, every breath is measured, every step placed in the silence between heartbeats. The trail winds upward into a fold of land where the snow is deeper, the air thinner. They know this place. It is where the reindeer gather when the wind shifts to the north, a pocket of shelter between stone outcrops. But when they reach the ridge, the herd is gone. Below, on the flat, they see why. The strangers are there, 5 of them, their movements quick and deliberate. 3 are cutting into a carcass, steam rising from its torn belly. 1 works at the hide, slicing it free in long strips, while another stands apart, watching the tree line with something in his hand that glints faintly when it catches the light. The Neanderthals watch from above. There is no whisper of wind to carry their scent away. The smell of blood is thick, almost sweet, curling upward into their throats. Hunger tightens in their bellies, but hunger is not what moves them now. It is the knowledge that this kill was theirs by right of the land, by the rhythm they have followed since before these others appeared. To take it without asking, without trade, is more than theft, it is a challenge. The elder hunter makes a small gesture, and the band fans out along the ridge. They do not rush. They move as if the snow were glass that might shatter under their weight. 1 picks up a stone from the frozen ground and lets it roll from his palm. It falls, striking the slope below with a hollow crack. The strangers look up. For a moment, no one moves. The 2 groups study each other across the cold air, eyes locking over the open ground. The Neanderthals see the strangers' faces clearly now narrower, the skin stretched fine over bone, the eyes bright and restless. The strangers see them too, their heavy frames, their thick furs, the spears tipped with stone darkened by long use. It could end here, with both sides stepping back. But the youngest stranger, barely more than a boy, raises his arm and lets fly a small, thin spear. It whistles through the air and buries itself in the snow a pace from the nearest Neanderthal. A warning, but a deliberate one. The elder's jaw tightens. He steps forward, lifting his own spear high, the point glinting in the muted light. He drives it into the ground, deep, the sound of it splitting the frozen crust echoing through the valley. Another warning but his says, "We are not afraid. The strangers do not run. They gather their meat quickly, their movements sharp and efficient, and retreat toward the trees, never turning their backs until they vanish into the shadows. The Neanderthals do not follow. Not today. They descend to the kill site, the snow-stained red, the ground churned with prints. What remains of the carcass is little, but it is enough to feed the children for another day. They take it in silence, knowing the message has already been sent. The land has room for only 1 claim, and the first line between them has been carved, not in words, not in blood, but in the frozen earth itself. Snow falls in slow, deliberate flakes, drifting sideways on a wind that cuts deep, carrying the smell of pine and something else, something sharp, acrid, that doesn't belong to the forest. The Neanderthal band moves through the trees in single file, each step swallowed almost instantly by the whiteness. They are returning from a hunt, not victorious but not empty-handed. 2 hares, a small red deer, enough to fill the stomachs for 1 night if shared carefully. Their breath hangs in the air like ghosts following too close. The cave is still half a day's walk, the trail winding through gullies and across a frozen stream, and they are tired in the way only winter can make a body tired. But when they crest a low rise and look down into the hollow where they keep their tools cached beneath a slab of stone, they stop as one. The slab has been moved. The snow around it is churned with prints narrow, long striding, cutting deep into the crust. The younger hunters tense, their hands already tightening around their spears. The elder says nothing, but his jaw works slowly as he kneels, lifting the slab the rest of the way. Inside, where there should be the cold gleam of stone blades, the bundled sinew cord, the shaped points for future hunts, there is nothing but disturbed snow, and the faint imprint of something heavy having been lifted away. Beside it, in the drift, lies a single object, a fragment of bone carved with lines too precise to be natural, wrapped with a strip of hide knotted in a way none of them say. A message. A claim. The elder turns it over once, then tosses it aside. His voice is low when he says, "They came here." The walk back to the cave is different now, not just slow but coiled. The hares and the deer are carried in silence, their weight suddenly less than the weight of what has been taken. This is no longer the stealing of food and hunger. This is the taking of tools, the lifeblood of the hunt, the work of many days shaping. To strip them away is to say you will not feed, you will not survive without us knowing. Night falls with the cave mouth glowing faintly from within, the fire already lit by those who stayed behind. The meat is roasted, the fat hissing as it meets the flames, but there is no talk, no rhythm of stories tonight. Even the children sense it, their play subdued, their eyes tracking the hunters' faces for answers they will not be given. Later, when the fire has burned low and most are sleeping, the elder and 3 others slip out, moving into the dark without the weight of game on their backs, without the sound of laughter in their throats. They move like the night itself, down the frozen slope, across the stream where the ice groans under their weight, toward the places where the stranger's smoke was last seen. Hours pass, the snow deepens. In the distance, through the bare lattice of trees, there is a faint pulse of orange. The stranger's camp. Close enough now to smell the singed hair of fresh hides, the meat still cooking. Figures move around the fire-lean shapes, casting long shadows, voices rising and falling in patterns quick and foreign. The Neanderthals stay in the dark, the cold biting into their cheeks, watching. The youngest of them shifts his weight, and the snow beneath him compresses with a muted crunch. One of the strangers looks up, head tilting like a wolf catching a scent. For a heartbeat, no one moves. Then, slowly, the elder reaches down, scoops a handful of snow, and lets it fall back to the ground, a soundless signal to his own. They turn and fade into the trees, leaving no trace but their breath in the cold air. By the time they return to the cave, the stars are paling toward dawn. They bring no food, no stolen tools, no victory, only knowledge. The strangers are not far, they sleep light, and they are not afraid to take what is not theirs. In the days that follow, the band will guard their tools more closely, hide their food deeper in the earth, send their young to fetch water only in pairs. But even as they prepare, they understand something new. The strangers will come again, not because they must, but because they can. And when that happens, the quiet war between them will no longer be quiet. It begins with a sound that does not belong to winter, not the groan of ice under shifting weight, not the whisper of snow sliding from a branch, but the high, thin snap of something brittle under sudden force wood, perhaps, or bone. It carries through the trees like a warning, and every head in the band turns toward it at once. They are half a day into a hunt, spread in a loose crescent along the valley's slope, tracking a small group of ibex that fled here after the last storm. The air is still, the snow soft underfoot, perfect for stalking. But now, every sense sharpens. The elder lifts his hand, the band halts, then it comes again closer this time, followed by a faint, rhythmic crunching in the snow. They are not alone. From between 2 dark trunks, the first shape emerges not an animal, but a man. Taller than any of them, his furs cut close to the body, a strip of leather binding his hair away from his face. Behind him, others appear. 4, 5, 6. They move with a confidence that is not caution, their eyes scanning the slope as if they expect to see what they're looking for. And then they do. The strangers stop. For a heartbeat, the forest holds its breath. The Neanderthals stand as they are, broad, still, heavy in the snow, spears in hand. The strangers' faces are unreadable, their breath smoking in the air. One of them speaks, the words sharp and quick, too fast to follow. The sound alone is enough to set the muscles along the Neanderthal's shoulders tightening. There is no common tongue here, only the universal grammar of stance, of weapon, of gaze. The elder steps forward, planting the butt of his spear in the snow, its tip angled upward. The gesture is clear, this ground is claimed. The tallest of the strangers responds by lifting his own weapon, a spear of pale wood tipped with a narrow, gleaming stone, unlike any the Neanderthals have seen. He turns it in his hand, letting the light catch on the edge, showing it, not hiding it. Another man begins to move sideways, slow and deliberate, as if to encircle. The Neanderthal hunters shift with him, closing their line, their boots sinking deep into the drift. The wind picks up, sifting powder into the space between them. No one breaks the line. Then the youngest stranger does something unexpected. He lowers his spear and steps forward, holding out a strip of meat. Not fresh, it has the dark, dry edges of something smoked. An offering, or perhaps a lure. The elder does not take it. Instead, he takes a single pace forward and lets his breath plume out between them, close enough now that he can see the stranger's eyes clearly. They are light, like water under thin ice, and they do not look away. Time stretches, heavy and cold. Then, somewhere beyond the line of trees, a voice shouts one of the stranger's own. It is followed by the sharp, violent yelp of an animal in pain. The man with the meat flinches, glances over his shoulder. In that moment, the elder raises his spear slightly, just enough to break the stillness. The strangers pull back. No words, no blows. Just retreat fast, but not panicked, vanishing into the trees as if they had never been there. The Neanderthals stand for a moment longer, listening to the forest close over the space between them. They know this was not the fight. This was the measuring. The kind of meeting after which both sides return to their fires with new thoughts, new doubts, and the certainty that the next time will not end without blood. That night, the band eats in silence. The ibex is gone, scattered by the encounter, and their meal is thin: a few strips of smoked meat, roots dug from under the snow, a handful of berries thawed near the fire. But it is not hunger that makes the air heavy. It is the awareness that the strangers now know their faces, their size, their numbers. The quiet war has stepped out from the trees, and the winter has only just begun. The storm comes in without warning, thick, heavy snow that swallows sound and sight, turning the world into a slow-moving blur of white and shadow. For 2 days, the band stays close to the cave, tending the fire, rationing what little they have left from the last hunt. Children sleep pressed into the curve of their mothers' bodies, wrapped in layers of hide, their small breaths lost in the muffled stillness. Outside, the wind moves like a living thing, curling into every gap in the stone, dragging icy fingers along the floor. On the third morning, when the sky lightens enough to see more than an arm's length, 2 hunters go out to check the traps set before the storm. They do not return. At first, no one says the word lost. Storms can delay, snow can hide tracks, ice can turn even a short walk into a fight for life. But when dusk falls and there is no sound of their steps, no flicker of movement in the tree line, the elder calls for a search. 4 go, moving through the waist-deep snow in a wide arc. The traps are found quickly, 2 empty, 1 smashed, the wooden frame splintered as if struck with a stone. The hunters are not there. Instead, they find a patch of churned snow, blood dark against the white, and scattered around it pieces of hide and bone. Not animal hide, not animal bone. The wind scours the scene, even as they stand over it, erasing details, blurring edges, but there is enough to know. The wounds are too clean to be from teeth, too precise to be from claws. The cuts are the work of hands that knew exactly where to strike. One of the searchers bends and pulls something from the snow, a thin, sharp blade of stone, hafted into a handle bound with sinew. Not theirs. The smell of smoke drifts faintly from the east. The four return to the cave without the bodies. There are no words when they enter, only the way every face turns toward the doorway, reading the truth in the searcher's eyes before it is spoken. The elder places the stranger's blade on the ground near the fire. No one touches it. The flames catch its edge, making it flash in the dim light like an eye opening and closing. That night, the silence in the cave is different, thicker, edged with something that feels like the pause before movement. No stories are told. No songs are hummed to the children. Even the fire seems to burn lower, its light shrinking inward. The youngest hunter, restless, goes to the mouth of the cave and stares out into the black. Somewhere out there, the strangers are close enough to smell the smoke, close enough to hear the crack of a log splitting, close enough to kill two men and take what they carried. It is not fear that fills his chest, but something harder, heavier. By morning, the snow has stopped, and the world outside glitters as if nothing has ever bled into it. But inside, the band knows the season has changed. Not in weather, but in the way they will walk the land from now on. The strangers have drawn blood, and once that line is crossed, the cold between two kinds of human only deepens. The decision is not spoken, but it is made all the same. By the time the sun has dipped below the jagged horizon, the elder has chosen 4 to leave with him, each one strong enough to move quickly and quiet enough to disappear when stillness is needed. They take no sleds, no extra hides, no heavy spears meant for bringing down mammoth or bison. This is not a hunt for meat, this is a hunt for balance. The wind is light, the air brittle with cold, and every sound seems to travel farther than it should. They move east, toward the place where the stranger's smoke was seen 2 nights before, slipping through narrow gullies, pausing in the lee of boulders when the moonlight flares too bright on the snow. There is no hurry. The strangers are not moving. Their camp will be there. The Neanderthals smell it before they see it. The thick, oily tang of hides being cured, the sweet charred scent of fat dripping into fire. Then the sound. Low voices, the occasional burst of laughter, the hiss of something roasting. They approach from downwind, stepping where the snow is already broken by animal paths. Their bodies bent low to match the slope of the ground. The stranger's camp sits in a shallow bowl, ringed by the shadows of pine trunks. 4 shelters, crude but tight against the wind, their walls stitched from hides and weighted with stone. The fire in the center burns steady, the orange light catching on the edges of weapons propped in the snow. The Neanderthals wait, watching the shapes move in and out of the glow. There are 7 of them, 5 men, 2 women, all armed. None seem to be guarding, though a spear leans within reach of every hand. The elder gives the smallest nod, and the band moves. Not straight in, they circle wide, vanishing into the tree line, until the camp is between them. Then, like wolves closing on a herd, they close the circle. One of the strangers rises from the fire to relieve himself, stepping just beyond the light. He never comes back. A muffled thud, the crunch of snow under a sudden shift of weight, and the dark swallows him whole. The others don't notice it first. The wind masks small sounds. But then a second shape falls, a woman reaching for a pot hung over the flames, pulled backward so quickly the fire barely flares in the draft she leaves behind. Shouts now, movement sharp and frantic. A man grabs for his spear, but it is already gone, wrenched from his grasp and thrown into the dark. One of the shelters collapses as its supports are cut, hides folding inward over the figures inside. The camp erupts in chaos, strangers stumbling into each other, their voices high and fast, words tumbling over each other like stones in a flood. The Neanderthals don't linger. They strike and vanish, never letting the light touch them for more than a heartbeat, always moving just out of reach. By the time the strangers regroup enough to stand in a tight knot by the fire, 3 of their number are gone, dragged into the night, and 2 more are bleeding from shallow cuts, meant not to kill but to remind. Then, as quickly as it began, it is over. The Neanderthals melt back into the trees, their breath steaming in the cold, their ears tuned to the camp behind them. No one follows. They will not be chased tonight. When the band returns to the cave, the others rise silently from their sleeping furs, watching the hunters' faces for signs of victory or loss. The elder drops something onto the packed earth near the fire. A stranger's spear, its shaft carved with marks that mean nothing to them, its tip still slick with blood. It is not a trophy, it is a signal. The strangers will know this was no accident, no animal's work, no unlucky chance. It was a message returned. For the first time in many moons, the Neanderthals sleep with their fire burning high. But no one mistakes the warmth for safety. They know the strangers will answer, and when they do, it will not be with caution. The first sign is not smoke or sound, it is the absence of both. The forest feels hollow in the days after the raid, the air holding a strange stillness that makes even the crows silent. The Neanderthals move carefully, hunting closer to the cave, gathering wood in pairs, sending the children only to the stream that runs directly beneath the ridge. The elder tells them the strangers will answer, but even he does not know when. It comes on the 5th morning. The sky is pale, the snow frozen into a hard crust that cracks under every step. The women are working hides near the fire, the smell of scraped skin and smoke curling into the cold, while 2 hunters chip at a block of ice to free the meat stored beneath it. The youngest of the band, a boy not yet old enough to carry a spear, spots movement down the slope. Figures. At first, he thinks it's the hunters returning from the low valley, but the shapes are wrong. Taller, leaner, with long shadows of spears in their hands. They are coming straight up the ridge. No attempt to hide. No pause at the tree line. The boy runs to the cave, his voice sharp and hin as it cuts through the air. By the time the band gathers, the strangers are halfway up. There are more than before, 10 at least, maybe more in the trees behind. They move in 2 lines, one advancing, the other holding back, their weapons raised but not thrown. The elder steps forward, spear in hand, planting himself between his people and the slope. The strangers stop just beyond the range of a throw. For a long moment, no one moves. Then one steps ahead, a man with pale hair, braided back, the gleam of worked stone at his belt. He speaks, his voice carrying in the cold. The words mean nothing, but the tone does. Steady, measured, without fear. He points to the spear the Neanderthals took, now propped by the cave entrance. Then he points to the forest, away from the ridge. The meaning is clear enough, give it back, and leave. The elder does not move. The man's gaze hardens. He says something over his shoulder, and 2 of his people break from the line, moving fast toward the edge of the ridge where the woodpile sits. One of the Neanderthal women shouts, rushing forward, but an arrow whistles past her, striking the snow at her feet. It is not meant to hit. Not yet. The strangers seize 2 of the larger logs from the pile, then retreat behind their line. The pale-haired man speaks again, louder now, gesturing once more toward the spear. The elder's fingers tighten around his own weapon. He takes one slow step forward, not to return the spear, but to set his own feet in the snow. The man's jaw flexes. Then the attack begins. It is not a wild rush, it is a pattern. 3 step forward, spears thrusting in unison, while 2 behind them throw light javelins that hiss through the air. The Neanderthals block one, catch another, but the 3rd strikes a man in the thigh, sending him to one knee with a roar. The line closes in, not to kill quickly, but to push, driving them back toward the cave mouth, forcing them into the narrow opening where numbers matter less. Stones are thrown from the higher ground inside the ridge, cracking against shields made from hide stretched over wood. The strangers press harder, arrows now finding small gaps in the defense, not deadly but bleeding the strength from the band. Then, as suddenly as it began, they stop. The pale-haired man raises a hand, and the strangers withdraw a few steps, just far enough that the cave is no longer within reach. He speaks once more, points again to the forest, then to the sky, then turns away without looking back. The message is burned into every mind. We can come when we wish. We can hurt without taking. We will return. When the slope is empty, The band gathers in the half-light of the cave. The wounded man's leg is bound with hide, the blood seeping slowly through. No one speaks of victory or loss. They all understand what has shifted. The strangers no longer move like wanderers. They move like owners. And owners do not ask twice. The pale-haired man's voice still echoes in the elder's head long after the strangers vanish into the trees. Not the words, those were meaningless sounds, but the cadence, the way it carried over the snow like a promise more than a threat. The cave feels smaller now, its walls pressing closer as if the rock itself senses what is coming. The fire burns, but its warmth feels like a fragile skin stretched over the cold reality, settling into every bone. The wounded man sleeps fitfully, leg bound tight, breath sharp with pain. The children are kept near the back, where the shadows hide them from the cave mouth, where the wind is only a whisper. Outside, the world is silent, except for the occasional groan of the forest in the cold. It is the kind of silence that breeds thought, and thought, tonight, is heavy. The band has lived through winters that seemed endless, storms that buried the land so deep it was hard to remember the shape of the ground beneath. They have faced cave bears in the dark, lions that could pull a grown hunter down with a single leap, sudden sickness that spread like smoke. But none of those were like this. None of those thought back. None of those remembered. The elder knows they cannot meet the strangers in open fight. Their weapons reach farther. Their numbers grow each time they are seen. Yet to run is to starve. To leave the valley is to step into unknown ground in the dead of winter. So they begin to weave something between fight and flight. The caches are moved first meat and tools buried under deep drifts, far from the obvious trails, marked only by patterns in stone and branch that no outsider would notice. Water is drawn from the stream at dawn before light touches the surface, then sealed beneath slabs of ice so thick they look untouched. Fires are kept low, smoke trapped under the sheltering overhang of rock. The hunters change their routes daily, sometimes circling far before returning, sometimes disappearing for 2 days to lay false trails that lead to empty ground. The women grind more bone into powd, mixing it with fat to make paste that can be eaten raw if the fires are forced coal. Even the children are taught to move without leaving marks, to press their feet in the old footprints of others, to carry only what they can drop without a sound. These are not plans for victory. These are plans to vanish in plain sight. Yet there is another layer, one spoken only between the elder and the 2 oldest hunters. If the strangers press again, the band will not wait at the cave. They will take the fight to them, not to kill all, but to cut their strength. Strike when they hunt, when they sleep, when they think the night is empty. Make them wary of every shadow, every snap of a twig, until they understand that this place will not be held without cost. The decision is not one the elder takes lightly. The strangers move with a kind of coordination that is new to him. Their patterns too deliberate to be born of instinct alone. They talk as they fight, signaling each other with sounds and movements that shift like water. It is a kind of mind the Neanderthals know, but do not share. And that difference is the edge sharp, but double-sided. If they cannot match it, they must make the strangers fear what they cannot read. That night, no one sleeps deeply. Even the fire seems restless, snapping louder than it should, casting light in erratic bursts along the cave walls. Every face is lit for a moment, then swallowed by shadow again, as if the cave is reminding them all that they are still part of the dark, and the dark, if used well, can still be theirs. They move at night, when the cold is sharp enough to keep even the wolves in their dens, when the snow underfoot is hard and loud, unless you know how to place each step in its frozen skin. The elder chooses only 4 to go with him, 2 seasoned hunters whose eyes can read shadow as clearly as print on bone, and 2 younger ones with the speed to vanish before a thrown spear can follow. They carry no heavy furs, only what they must to survive the hours away from the cave. The wind is behind them, the sky brittle and scattered with stars that seem too close, too watchful. It takes hours to reach the ridge above the strangers' camp. They find it by smell first, the tang of fresh blood from a recent kill, the bitter smoke of wood. They do not burn themselves. The camp sits in a shallow hollow, ringed by low mounds of snow and the dark outlines of hides stretched between poles. Figures move in the firelight, 3 around the flames, 2 more at the edge, scanning the tree line. They are more careful now. The Neanderthals see that instantly. More eyes on the dark, more weapons within reach. It makes the approach slower, but not impossible. The elder signals with the tilt of his head, and the band melts into the tree line, circling wide to take the camp from 2 sides. They wait until one of the watchers turns his gaze toward the frozen river. Then they move. The first blow is not to the body, but to the food. 2 hunters bursting from the dark to topple the rack of drying meat into the snow, scattering the pieces into the blackness where they vanish like dropped stones into water. Shouts tear into the night, the strangers scrambling, some grabbing spears, others rushing to the fire. That is when the second strike comes. 2 stones, thrown hard from opposite flanks, one slamming into the side of the fire pit to send embers up in a shower of sparks, the other cracking into the shoulder of a man as he turns. Chaos ripples through the camp. The strangers shout to each other, but the words are useless in the dark, drowned by the sound of running feet that seem to come from every side. One lunges toward the shadow of a fleeing figure and finds only snow. Another bends to snatch a fallen spear and feels the air shift as something moves behind him, only to whirl into emptiness. The Neanderthals never linger long enough to be fixed in place. They strike, withdraw, strike again, never from the same direction twice. It is not slaughter, it is disruption. Make them cold, make them hungry, make them watch the dark instead of sleeping in it. By the time the strangers gather themselves, spears bristling, the Neanderthals are already gone, their tracks lost in the weave of old trails and false paths laid earlier in the night. From the ridge, the elder watches the camp below. The fire is being rebuilt, but slower now. The hands that work it pausing often to scan the tree line. The stranger's movements are tight, their voices lower. Even from this distance, he can see the way their heads turn at every sound, their bodies jerking at the snap of settling ice. He knows they will recover. He knows they will come again, maybe stronger. But he also knows something else tonight. The strangers will not sleep as they did before. And in a winter like this, losing sleep is as dangerous as losing blood. The band returns to the cave before dawn, the air in their lungs raw, their hands stiff from the cold. No trophies are brought back, no visible proof of what was done. But the elder does not need proof. The change has begun. The war is no longer silent. It is in the ground now, in the snow, in the space between every breath, and neither side will stop until the other is gone. The snow has stopped falling, but the cold remains, deeper now, seeping into the ground until even the stones seem to hum with it. The valley is wrapped in a kind of silence that feels heavier than before, as if the air itself has thickened, slowing every movement, making every breath a negotiation. The Neanderthals move less during the day, their hunts now brief and sharp, aimed only at what can be carried quickly back to the cave. The caches hidden in the snow are opened more often, and the taste of frozen meat becomes the taste of the season. At night, the fire burns low, not because the wood is gone, but because smoke is a signal, and signals are dangerous. The younger ones fidget in the dark, whispering too loudly, asking when the strangers will come again. The older ones do not answer. They do not know. The elder watches them all, noting how their shoulders curve closer to the heat, how their eyes linger longer on the narrow mouth of the cave as if expecting a shadow to break its shape at any moment. Food is not the only thing running low. The strangers, too, are changing. Tracks show less movement than before. The wide arcs of their hunts have shortened, their fire pits now deeper and more shielded from wind. Once, the elder finds a trail of blood leading away from where they had camped, ending in a shallow burial mound beneath a leaning pine. He does not disturb it. Death is already doing its work for him. But weakness in one winter can become strength in the next if given time. And time is what he cannot allow them. The hunters are sent in pairs to shadow the strangers when they leave camp, Not to attack, but to count how many hands carry spears, how many shoulders sag under the weight of game, how many steps they take before stopping. The numbers are not falling fast enough. And so the elder begins to think of risk differently. Waiting may keep his people alive for now, but it will not keep the strangers from gathering strength. The cold will not kill them if they learn to live in it. He sees it in the way they now wrap their legs in hide, the way they set traps along the rabbit runs, the way they no longer light fires in the open. Each adaptation is a seed for the future. Each seed must be burned before it grows. That night, while the fire inside the cave sighs low and the snow outside gleams under a hard moon, the elder lays out the shape of what must come next. It will not be a single strike, like the raid on their camp. It will be many small wounds traps set not for food but for fear. Stones rolled from ridges when their lines pass below. The slow removal of anything they might use to survive. Spears stolen from where they lean against a tree. Water holes fouled with rotting fish. Trails covered until they vanish into the blankness of the snow. The younger hunters listen with wide eyes, the older ones with slow nods. This is not hunting. This is something colder, something that will take more from them than the winter itself. Yet no one speaks against it. The choice was made the moment the strangers stood on the slope and demanded the valley. By morning, the first traps are already being laid. They begin where the strangers feel safest, along the narrow game paths where the snow is already pressed hard by many feet, where the air smells faintly of old kills and the branches overhead block the wind. Here, a careless step can be turned into an ending. The first trap is simple, a shallow pit dug just deep enough to twist an ankle, covered with a thin crust of snow and a scatter of needles. The second is more deliberate, a long branch weighted at one end with stone, suspended just high enough to swing into the path when a trigger line is touched. The Neanderthals work quickly, silent but not hurried, their breath visible only when the moon slides clear of cloud. The elder moves among them, checking each placement, adjusting angles, pressing his palm into the snow to test whether the surface will hold until the moment it is meant to break. By dawn, the first line of the valley is sown with uncertainty. The strangers are not foolish, they sense the change. Tracks show hesitation now, pauses where none were before. More than once, the hunters watching from the ridges see them stop, staring into the white, shifting their weight as if the snow itself has turned hostile. And then, the first wound. A sharp cry carries on the wind one morning, high and raw, followed by a rush of movement as the strangers gather around a fallen shape. They half carry, half drag the injured man back toward camp, their pace uneven, their heads snapping toward every sound. The Neanderthals do not follow, they do not need to. The trap has already done its work, slowing the strangers, tightening their group, making every step a question. Days pass, and more signs appear. A spear left propped against a pine is gone by the next morning. A line of footprints vanishes into a drift where the snow has been collapsed into emptiness. The elder hears them before he sees them now. Their voices sharper, their movements louder in the brittle air. Hunger begins to carve their shapes thinner. Game is harder to find for all, but the Neanderthals have their caches, their secret runs through the trees, their skill at finding warmth where none seems possible. The strangers have only what they can take or kill, and every attempt carries the risk of something waiting in the snow. The forest becomes a kind of net, its threads invisible until touched. The Neanderthals pull and loosen them at will, sometimes letting the strangers pass unchallenged, sometimes tightening until the way back is slower, colder, heavier. This is not a war of bodies. It is a war of days and nights, of inches gained or lost in the dark. And in such a war, the elder knows, patience is the sharpest weapon. The cold changes in the deep heart of winter. It stops feeling like air and starts feeling like a weight pressing in from all sides, slow and constant, until movement itself becomes an effort measured in heartbeats. The snow no longer falls in soft flakes. It comes in hard, dry grains that sting the skin and whisper across the frozen ground like sand in a desert. Breath freezes against fur, turning collars into stiff rims of ice. The Neanderthals endure, as they have always endured. But even their fire burns differently now, more for survival than for comfort. In the dark, their shadows hunch low and their eyes burn with the red light of embers. The strangers, however, have begun to fray. The watchers on the ridge see them venture out less often, their hunts scattered and clumsy, marked by sudden retreats to camp as if the very forest is driving them back. Once, two are spotted dragging the carcass of a half-frozen deer. They drop it when a sound carries from the trees, leaving both meat and tracks for the Neanderthals to claim before the snow can bury them. The elder notes every retreat, every moment when hunger forces them to risk more than they wish. And yet, he also knows desperation sharpens teeth. A cornered creature will strike where it would once have fled. The proof comes on a night when the moon is thin and the wind absent. A night so still that even the snow seems to pause. The strangers do not wait for daylight. They come in a line through the valley, moving low, their shapes blending into the dark edges of the trees. But they are not hunting game. They are hunting warmth. By the time the Neanderthals hear them, the strangers are close enough that their breaths cloud in the same air. The alarm is a single shout, deep and sharp, answered by the scramble of feet on stone. Spears are snatched from the walls, fire coaxed into brightness, bodies pressed into the narrow mouth of the cave where the rock funnels any approach. The first clash is brief and brutal, a rush of figures into the glow. The dull sound of wood striking wood, the heavy thud of a stone against a shoulder. A spear point snaps in the cold. A stranger slips on frozen rock and vanishes into shadow before a finishing blow can fall. Then they are gone, as quickly as they came, leaving only churned snow and the reek of sweat and fear. The elder stands in the cave mouth long after, the heat of his breath cooling on his lips, watching the trees for the return that does not come. This was no raid for food. This was a test, a measure of their strength, a glimpse into the shape of what will follow when hunger grows sharper still. The Neanderthals know now what the strangers are willing to risk. And in that knowledge, the elder feels the narrow line between hunter and hunted blur, just a little more. The valley no longer feels like a place between seasons, it feels like a place between breaths, caught in a pause that cannot last. The snow lies deep, untouched in some places for weeks, but where feet have passed, the surface is churned into frozen ridges sharp as broken bone. The Neanderthals no longer try to hide their presence. Their tracks cross openly in the center of the valley. Their smoke rises in thin columns that no longer care to be unseen. The elder knows the silence between them has stretched too long, that the next meeting will not be an accident but an answer. The watchers return with news that the strangers have begun building walls of snow and ice around their camp, that their fires burn longer into the night, that they have set lines of sharpened stakes facing the forest. They are not leaving, and so the elder calls the hunters, each by name, until the circle is full. The wounded man now walks with a limp, but carries his spear again. The younger ones hold their weapons in both hands, knuckles pale against the wood. This is not the gathering for a hunt. It is the gathering for a message. The plan is simple and brutal: strike the edge of the strangers' camp at dawn, break their lines, scatter their food stores, and vanish before they can rally. No killing. If it can be avoided, not yet. The aim is not to end them, but to show them the cost of staying. That night, no one speaks of the dangers. They speak instead of the path they will take, the signs to watch for, the way the light will hit the snow when the moment comes. The cold seems sharper than usual, as if the air itself is listening. When dawn finally bleeds through the trees, the Neanderthals move as one. They cross the valley floor without sound, their bodies low, their breath hidden behind scarves of fur. The strangers' camp comes into view slowly, a wall of white broken by the dark line of sharpened stakes, beyond which faint movement stirs. The elder signals, and the band fans out, each taking their place along the arc they had traced in the snow days before. The first sound is the crack of a branch underfoot, deliberate, meant to draw eyes. Then the rush snow spraying, spears raised, the air filling with the sudden noise of feet pounding frozen earth. The strangers shout, some scrambling to their defenses, others grabbing for weapons left by the fire. The clash is not a battle in the old sense, it is a storm. One moment, Neanderthals are inside the camp, scattering dried meat into the snow, kicking apart stacks of firewood. The next, they are gone, vanishing into the white before the strangers can regroup. No blood is spilled, but the mark is left all the same. The strangers will eat less tonight, their fires will burn shorter, and they will sleep knowing that the valley is not theirs to claim without a fight. By nightfall, the wind carries more than the usual cold. It carries a taste of smoke that is not their own, faint but sharp enough to make the elders' nostrils flare. The strangers have fed their fire longer than they should, perhaps to drive away the memory of what happened at dawn, or perhaps to send their own message back across the snow. We are still here. The Neanderthals do not answer in words. Instead, they watch. The watchers take turns through the long hours, perched among the rocks where shadows fall thick, studying the glow in the distance. The strangers move differently now. Fewer leave the camp at once, and those who do walk in tight groups, spears in hand. Their hunts are short, and sometimes they return empty-handed, dragging only branches for fuel. Yet there is no sign of retreat. If anything, their defenses have grown. The wall of snow has doubled in height, and sharpened stakes now ring not only the camp but the nearest paths into the forest. The elder understands the shift. This is no longer a contest of survival. It is a contest of will. And in such contests, it is not the cold or the hunger that breaks a group first, but the doubt. So the Neanderthals feed that doubt like a slow-burning fire. They move the strangers' traps a few paces from where they were set, enough to break trust in their own work. They leave stones in the snow that seem to have rolled there by chance, but which no wind could have carried. They follow quietly for hours without striking, until the strangers turn again and again, certain they are being hunted. And sometimes they are. One evening, the watchers see two strangers kneeling by the edge of a frozen stream, hacking at the ice for water. A shadow shifts in the trees, and a stone arcs down into the snow beside them, not striking, not even close, but near enough to make them drop their tools and flee. It is a reminder. The strangers answer in kind. One morning, the Neanderthals find a set of footprints leading close to their own cave, stopping only when the slope grows steep. No attack follows, but the message is clear. They are willing to come closer than before. The hunters track the prints back toward the valley floor and find them joining with others, more than a dozen in all. The numbers are troubling, but the elder sees something else in them. The depth of each step, the way the snow is broken unevenly. These are tired men, moving with weight they cannot hide. Hunger is pulling at them faster than the cold. All that remains is to decide how long to let it work before the next strike. The change comes not with a shout or a charge, but with a sound too deep to be wind, the groan of ice under sudden weight, the crack that follows like a bone breaking. The hunters on the ridge see it first. A small group of strangers crossing the frozen stream, heads low, arms full of bundled wood. They do not know that beneath the snow, the water has eaten the ice from below, leaving only a thin crust. One step too far and a man disappears waist-deep into the black, thrashing as the current seizes him. His companions drag him out, but the damage is done. Steam rises from his clothes, his hands stiff with the cold before they even reach the bank. They will not hunt today. The elder watches this from afar and feels the shift. It is the season itself joining the fight, stripping strength from those who came uninvited. And yet, the strangers do not break. That night, the glow from their camp is brighter than ever, their fires build high, throwing long shadows against the snow walls. They are daring the valley to come for them, and the valley answers. Before dawn, the Neanderthals move. Not in silence this time, but with the steady rhythm of feet on packed snow, the low growl of voices that carry in the still air. They come in two lines from opposite sides, forcing the strangers to split their defense. The first clash is a rain of thrown spears, some striking the snow wall and sticking there like claws, others finding the wood of shelters, tearing through furs. The strangers return in kind, their points glinting in the firelight. A spear hisses past the elder's head and shatters against a stone, sending shards into the dark. The Neanderthals close the gap. This is not the swift rate of before it is a push. A grind of bodies against the edge of the camp, the crunch of snow under boots, the heavy thud of stone against wood. A stranger lunges through the wall's gap, only to be met by the haft of a spear swung sideways, sending him sprawling. Another tries to flank along the tree line but finds himself mirrored by two hunters moving step for step. The fire roars, the wind rises, and for a moment it is nothing but the sound of effort, of breath, of the cold biting at every exposed inch of skin. And then, as if by some shared signal, the Neanderthals pull back not in retreat but in release, leaving the strangers in their disrupted camp, fires half scattered, walls broken in places. No one lies dead on the snow, but the mark is clear. The valley is not theirs. As the Neanderthals vanish into the trees, the elder knows this is the last warning they will give. The next meeting will not end without blood. The valley is no longer quiet. Even when the wind rests, the air feels heavy, as if holding the weight of all that has passed. Tracks crisscross the snow in every direction, some days old, others fresh enough to still hold the sharp edges of a heel. The Neanderthals no longer speak of the strangers as if they were distant. They speak of them as one might speak of a shadow that moves where you move, that stops when you stop. The elder walks the length of the ridge at dawn, eyes following the thin plume of smoke from the stranger's camp. It is steady, unbroken, a sign of discipline. They have not weakened enough to abandon their fire, not yet. But their walls are lower now, their paths narrower, and their hunts bring back less each time. Hunger will soon press its hand fully against their backs. And hunger is a weapon. That morning, the hunters set out in pairs, not to fight, but to take the land itself from the strangers piece by piece. They block the small stream that runs toward the strangers' camp, using stones and ice to slow its trickle until the water freezes solid in place. They pull down branches over known trails, forcing any movement into deeper, slower snow. They drive the reindeer herds farther up the valley where the strangers will not follow. It is not a battle in the open. It is a tightening of the circle. For days, no direct clash comes, but tension builds in the silence. The watchers see figures pacing along the stranger's wall at night, hear distant shouts when traps are found empty. Once, in the deep blue before dawn, the elder sees a single stranger leave the camp alone, moving fast into the trees. The hunters follow without sound. They find him crouched beside a snare, hands trembling as he lifts a small hair from its loop. He does not hear them until they are close enough that his breath meets theirs. For a moment, no one moves. Then the stranger drops the hair and runs, leaving the animal to bound across the snow toward the forest. The elder does not give chase. It is enough that he knows they are reaching deeper into desperation. The firelight carves their faces into masks of resolve. They will not wait much longer. Every sign points to the same truth: the strangers will either leave or be driven into the snow to vanish like all who come unprepared for this place. And the valley, silent witness to it all, waits for the choice to be made. It begins with the wind, or at least, that is how it sounds at first. A low hum rising through the trees, threading between the rocks, shaking the frost loose from the pine branches, so that it falls in fine silver powder. But the hunters know this is not wind. The rhythm is wrong. It swells and drops like breath, like the sound of many moving at once. From the ridge, the watchers see it, the faint flicker of torchlight where no torch should be, weaving between the trees on the far side of the valley. The strangers are moving, not in pairs now, but as a body, their torches burning high against the dark. They are not coming to hunt. They are coming to strike. The elder gives the signal without a word, and the cave empties in silence, every hunter slipping into the snow with the precision of a single thought. There is no rush. They will not meet the strangers head-on in the open. The valley is their ally, and they will let it speak first. Along the narrow pass that cuts toward the strangers' camp, the Neanderthals have already laid the trap. Snow heaped high on an overhanging slope, held in place by a lattice of frozen branches. One cut, and the weight will fall. The hunters take their places along the shadows, every eye on the line of light moving closer. The strangers march with spears forward, their fires painting their faces in shifting gold and black. They are tired, but their steps are sure, their pace steady. The first of them reaches the pass, and the elder's hand rises. A single crack, the branch splitting, and then the valley exhales. Snow roars down in a white wall, swallowing the path, burying the front ranks in a crushing wave. Shouts break the night, the torchlight jerks and flails, some flames snuffed out under the weight. The rest scatter, scrambling for higher ground, slipping on the ice, their neat line broken into fragments. The Neanderthals do not rush in, they wait. They watch as the strangers dig, pull one another free, their breaths harsh in the cold. Each movement costs them more strength, and each moment in the snow eats away at the heat in their bodies. Only when the torches dim to embers do the hunters slip back into the trees, leaving the strangers to crawl home through the dark. No blood has spilled tonight, but the fight has begun, and both sides know it. The next meeting will not be decided by traps alone. It will be decided in the open, where one side will stand and the other will vanish into the white forever. The last day comes without a sunrise. The sky is a pale, unbroken sheet, heavy with snow that refuses to fall, holding its weight until the air itself feels brittle. The Neanderthals move before the strangers can gather themselves from the night's cold. There is no stealth now. No shadow play their footsteps pound the crusted snow in unison, their breath rising in white bursts as they close the distance to the camp. The strangers see them coming. Spears lift, voices shout, and the narrow gate between the snow walls becomes a throat through which the first clash surges. Wood cracks, stone rings, the ground churns under boots and bare feet alike. The air is thick, with the sound of bodies striking shoulders slamming into shields. Hands locking on spear shafts, the dull, wet thud of stone finding flesh. A stranger lunges forward, his spear point catching the light before the elder wrenches it aside, driving him back into the wall. Another charges from the flank, only to meet a hunter's upward swing, sending him staggering into the churned snow. The fight spills across the camp. Fires are kicked apart, embers spinning into the cold, walls collapsing under the weight of bodies. In the center, the elder moves with slow, deliberate steps, each strike measured, each block unshaken, as if the cold itself bends around him. The strangers fight with the desperation of those who know there is no retreat. Every blow is meant to end the fight, every breath stolen from the freezing air. But the valley is no longer theirs to contest. The Neanderthals press forward, driving them to the far wall, where the snow drifts deep and the stakes bite through their backs. One by one, the strangers break. Some fall where they stand, too spent to rise. Others stumble into the open, running for the tree line, leaving their camp in ruin. No chase follows. The Neanderthals stand in the wreckage, the firelight flickering across their faces, the silence settling like a final word. The elder looks to the ridge, to the white stretch beyond, and knows that by nightfall the strangers will be gone, not buried, not hunted to the last, but driven out by a truth older than any tribe. In this valley, sir, survival belongs not to the strongest, but to those who can become the cold, who can move with it, wait with it, and let it decide when the fight is done. As the snow begins to fall at last, covering the last marks of the struggle, the valley exhales, and winter closes its hand once more.